Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to invite my friend Jen Esker. She is a top physical therapy influencer. She graduated with a BS in kinesiology and received her doctorate of physical therapy from Loma Linda University. She offers private sports therapy, online programs, workshops, and speaks at global engagements, attracting audiences from stay-at-home moms to Hollywood actors and Olympic athletes. Her mission is to help those who are willing to listen to their body, reverse aging, eliminate pain, and establish sustainable health. I personally have worked with Jen on a hip issue before I was pregnant. I was in her hands and I know the magic that they provide. And I just am excited for her to come on the show because I think if you guys are following along with her online, you know that she is providing videos and sustainable ways for us to really get in proper alignment at home. So, Jen, thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for being here and sharing your time with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, I listen to your podcast all the time and absolutely love what you do. So honored to be here.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I know everyone's going to enjoy your episode here today. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
First, I'd love to know, because I don't think I've even asked you this as a friend. Why did you want to become a physical therapist, and how did that journey start?
Yeah, it's just kind of been the thing that's like, well, what's interesting me right now and what do I want to go into? So from high school, I loved anatomy and I loved movement. I mean, I was a gymnast for 9 years. Yeah, 9 years, and then taught gymnastics. And so I just knew kinesiology was the only thing that was going to entertain me enough to want to do school. So I went into kinesiology, and from there, I had no idea what I was going to do after. But I started interning and working at a physical therapy office. And I actually worked there for like 3.5 years. And I knew that particular environment, because it was crazy, it was super fun as an aide. We got to do a lot, probably stuff that you're not really supposed to do. But I got to be a really hands-on. I got to take notes. I got to do so much. And what I realized is I loved seeing a physical therapist either watch movement, and I'm always like, what are they observing? What are they thinking in their heads, or feel movement with their hands? And what I got to see is the therapist is really the person who's walking you through your journey, right? Like you can go to the doctor's office and you might get diagnosed with something, but they don't really get to be there through the entire journey and through the like, here's my immense pain that I'm having, and now I'm free and I'm going back to the goal that I want. And I loved that aspect of seeing someone through their journey. And so I just knew, okay, well, no matter what the student loans are, I'm going to go be a physical therapist. That's just the thing that I want to do. And I was determined, and luckily got into school, and it's transformed from there, which has been amazing. But I still absolutely love what I do.
It's amazing, and it resonates with me so strongly that you're walking through this journey with people, because I've been told like you have a hip impingement, or your kyphotic curve, I think that's right, is like just
Yeah.
it's crazy, and like you need to work on X, Y, and Z. But to know where your body is in space and to have that proprioception to, I'm sure if you've watched me walk, so you know this, like there are people who just have the best posture and it looks like they're engaged without trying. And it's beautiful to watch people like that walk. And I want to embody that. I'm slouching, I'm holding babies, I'm, spending too much time either doing crazy yoga positions and or riding my Peloton bike. So I know that there's work to be done in this body, but I love that's what a physical therapist does, is kind of helps people along that journey. So can you talk a little bit about what a physical therapist's goals are whenever they're working with a client?
I mean, really, I would say you want a physical therapist who's going to hear exactly what your goal is. Like, it's not going to be something that's too outlandish. It's something that, like, okay, that might look different than what you maybe had in mind, but we can get you to this goal. And that is truly the journey of a physical therapist, is someone who's going to be there with you, who's not necessarily may not have all the answers up front. They're probably not going to tell you that, but they're constantly like re-observing and seeing what is working, seeing what's not working, because ultimately a physical therapist is a guide. We're here to facilitate you along your journey of your body. We're not here to fix you. And I think that is the mentality that's gotten mixed up a lot, is that I go to my physical therapist or my chiropractor and they're going to do something that's going to align me back into place, and then I can go out and do my life. Where not necessarily. We might help you feel more aligned in the moment based on what we do with our hands, but then it's up to you to really do the work and to really do the exercises and really guide your own body on your journey. We're just here to facilitate that journey. And I think that's something that I hope, my goal is to have people embody that day in and day out, understanding that it's okay to have pain, understanding that our body is on this journey, just like you are talking about having kids and then still like working out and doing all these different positions and working at a desk, like your body is on this journey. And it's not that we're never going to feel pain. Pain is a good thing. If I don't feel pain, then I don't know when something else is happening. I don't know when my body is being neglected in some way, and it could end up worse down the line if I don't feel that initial bout of pain. So pain is actually, it's a great thing. It's a part of our alarm system. It's part of our body, and it's the act of actively listening to that and then going to the people who are going to help facilitate and guide it. But it's not about the people who are going to fix it. Like, unless I'm an orthopedic surgeon who's sewing something back together, I am not the healer. I'm just the guide. And I think, I being able to do this now online allows me that aspect and allows people to see that journey for real, which is super, super cool, I think.
Oh, it's amazing. And I will say, when it comes to being the guide and not being the fixer, that's most practices. When people come to me as a nutritionist, I'm not going to be able to fix what they put in their mouth. I'm going to be able to guide them and direct them into what things might make them feel their best. But ultimately, I'm only as good as they're willing to, if they're willing to meet me at the table and make change, which,
Exactly.
and I know, I mean, I've seen physical therapists out, other people, and I know that how good I am is only how much time I'm spending on the exercises I'm supposed to be doing,
Mhm.
to take care of my body.
Yeah. And with that being said, too, I think it's a give and take. Like, if a physical therapist is giving you these exercises that, one, you won't have time for, or you have no idea why it's helping you, or you're not feeling any benefit, it's actually on the physical therapist to create that want, that drive to do these. Okay, let's see when you can fit these into your life. Let's see what actually makes sense. Let's make sure that you can feel the difference after you do this exercise so that you're going to want to carry it on to complete your goal. I don't necessarily like when a therapist is just like, oh, hands up in the air, patient didn't do their work. Well, you didn't allow them the access into their body to feel why that would be beneficial. And I think it is a relationship. It is not just what we're giving you, but it's what you're receiving. It's how you're receiving it. And it's really being able to implement that into the journey and into real life. Like, real life, we don't have an hour to just do all these exercises, right? Not at all. I don't, and I don't
Yeah.
expect my clients to. So it's, how are you going to sprinkle this into your day, like flossing your teeth, like brushing your teeth, in order to create this long-term change and get to the goal that we actually want.
I love it. I'm sure you've seen so many people walking around and you've gotten so good at looking at people's movement and understanding where that misalignment might be. Do you find that there are common themes with people and misalignment and things that just, you're like, I could fix that, I could fix that, I could fix that? And if you do have those things, what are they?
Yeah. Well, I used to, I will say, really be obsessive with looking at movement and trying to figure out, why is that happening? Da, da, da. I have let that go a little bit, because what you realize too is that what's cool is I like seeing someone actually where I notice they might have a little degree of cerebral palsy and one of their legs might drag behind the other. So they're never going to walk perfectly, but look at them out walking, out doing it, out, and I want to get that into people's mindset as well. Is like, we're not searching for this perfect alignment and this perfect symmetry, because that's in reality not real. It's just not. We're going to be dominant on one side. We're going to be doing things more than the other. It's just, symmetry isn't the goal, but it's function. And can you function through your life and do the things that you really want to be doing? And so in general, I like to, let's look at the body as a system, as a whole, and start to get the pieces moving that usually start to be neglected or aren't moving as well. And that's where we can look at the joint by joint method, which is really just blowing it up at the body and seeing what it looks like as a whole and saying, okay, where my upper back is usually super stiff. The hips are usually super stiff. The ankles are usually not moving as well, and the big toes. And when we look at the areas between all of those are usually the places that people experience more pain: the neck, the low back, the knees, the feet. And so when we just go, oh, this should be more stable, this should be more mobile, and it's like every other thing, you start to realize, oh, there's kind of a pattern here. And maybe for my back pain, I don't just need to do core exercises, but I need to realize that my hips are super stiff and I haven't given enough attention to them, or my upper back isn't moving well because I've been sitting at a desk all day long and I don't do anything to get out of that position throughout the day. And so it's starting to realize, oh, what's happening above and below these pain areas that I get to start to look at rather than just focusing in on the pain. There's someone named Ida Rolf, who is, if anyone has experienced Rolfing, super intense, right? But she was incredible because she has this famous quote that's, where you think it is, it ain't. And basically saying, where you think the pain is doesn't really mean that's the cause. Just because I'm feeling my knee screaming at me doesn't mean I need to do exercises directed at my knee. I may need to wake up my feet, open up my ankles, take pressure off my hip, and get all of this balanced so it automatically, my knee pain starts to go away. And if we can start to look at it that way, it pulls away from like, my low back hurts. What do I do for my low back? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I have to look at the entire picture. But if you can start to address that for yourself, like, oh, I'm sitting in chairs all day long. I'm never putting my legs in their full position. Like, I'm not sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor anymore. I'm only sitting in chairs and cars and couches. And we realize, oh, I'm lacking that range of motion, probably lacking that mobility. Maybe my back is taking over extra pressure. And so when we start to just draw in from a very general base point, but seeing how what's happening above and below those areas, we can start to understand what's happening in the body, and it becomes this really cool way of just starting to observe yourself.
I love that so much, because you're taking a pain point, which you're telling us is information, and not something we should be afraid of, something that we should use as an empowering message from our body that something needs to be taken care of. And instead of focusing on that pain, to take that and divert our attention to where we may be neglecting in our body to create strength, to empower people in a place of not focusing on the pain, but focusing on the areas where we have control, where we can empower those muscles. And you mentioned mobility and stability. I'd love for you to kind of go through some of these key terms: mobility, stability, and flexibility, because I think people sometimes want more flexibility, but they may need something else.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to kind of break down what those three terms mean and what we should be working for in our body.
Yeah, flexibility is essentially just that passive range of motion in our body. So it is being able to go into a split and look really cool on Instagram.
Which you can do and I cannot.
So
you can do it upside down. It's like, okay, whatever, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, those are like the special show off moves, but don't actually translate into function. Because unless you're this incredible person who's now like lifting your leg up and then maybe going on a really high step, or like a high rock climbing or hiking or whatever it may be, then you would use that function, but that's then mobility. So it switches from flexibility as just being able to kind of passively get into these ranges of motion without with having to use something. So maybe it's a strap, or maybe you're just like laying in the position, but it's passive. There's nothing active happening. Where and it's still great, and we could talk about when that's into play. And then mobility is being able to take this range now and make it active. So like I was saying, maybe you can pull your knee up to your chest. That's more flexibility. But can you stand and lift your knee up to your chest so you can stand and go on a really high step? How does that now translate into everyday life? Or if you trip and you're going to step out and grab yourself, you're not going to pull a hamstring because you have that functional active range of motion within your hip, within your inner thigh, your hamstring muscle, So we have to start thinking, okay, I don't want to just be able to touch my toes, but I want to be able to feel like I can use this range functionally now. I can use it in workouts. I can use it, to just take care of my kids, to bend down and grab something. That's when we want that flexibility to turn into mobility. And I typically address it's on a spectrum. I'm not in the boat of passive is bad and it's only active. I think we get to have both, and it just depends on what's necessary for your body. Sometimes people are not lacking this access into flexibility or like being able to touch your toes because you're kind of chronically in this state of a lot of tension within the body. And it's something that is unknown to most of us. Most people who are laying on my table, I'm saying, relax, relax, relax. And there's like, I am. And I'm like, you think you're relaxed, but you're actually not. If I were to lift your arm and let go, typically most people, it stays. That means there's still tension in the body. If the arm didn't just fall to the ground, there's something we get to work on. Your body is trying to protect you for some reason. And if you then suddenly go forward and try to touch your toes, your body's like, no, I don't feel safe there. And so it's pulling you back. And so there's this underlying tension that's happening in the body that prevents a lot of people from accessing this flexibility. And I have these videos like on YouTube of like touch your toes in 5 minutes that have gone, relatively viral for my YouTube channel because people, it doesn't take much to all of a sudden increase your range of motion because we're just adjusting the nervous system. We're getting the body to start to feel something different rather than laying in a stretch for minutes on end. It's, well, what if you squeezed something, a pillow between your legs and created stability, which we're going to talk about is more of like that strength aspect within the body. So it feels safe to be able to go into a new range of motion and you kind of go up and down touching your toes. Or what if you change the surface under your feet? And so your body is responding, your brain is responding to something differently. And if you put it underneath your toes and then you put it underneath your heels and then try to touch your toes, a few times, like you guys can try this right now and you'll be surprised afterwards. You move the pillows, you go bend over and touch your toes, and all of a sudden you have more range. And that's not just because we suddenly lengthened muscles. We responded to your nervous system in a different way, right? And so that's the baseline of flexibility, I think, is talking to the nervous system, is getting it to calm down, is releasing that idea of I need to protect you, I need to be on, and I need to not let you go anywhere. We have to access this relaxation in order to access this active motion, in order to be able to improve mobility. So I think there's both aspects, and it depends on where the person is along that spectrum of passively getting into more range of motion and talking to the nervous system, and then controlling the active range to turn that into more mobility, which in turn would turn into more stability and strength, because then we work on building the strength around that range of motion, around that end range, and we create strength within our body. So it's the spectrum, and it's both. And sometimes we're going to fall along that in different parts, and we're going to swing along the pendulum, and it's just starting to come back into awareness of where that is within my body, and then seeing how I can adjust that.
I love that so much. So if someone feels like they don't have range of motion passively, or then it's connecting to that mobility, whether that's squeezing a different muscle that's surrounding that joint or getting it, I don't know, is that technically like if someone were to see a physical therapist and they were given exercises, are those exercises, is the whole point of that to create mobility by having strength around a joint or a place that moves?
A lot of times, yeah. And it just, again, it depends. Like, so for example, I had a client before and he was super locked up in his body. Like his system did not trust him at all. And he had bouts and years of SI pain. And all he had been given previously is more like Pilates type exercises. Oh, I have this SI pain, which is like low back, tailbone pain. And so all I do is stabilize, stabilize, stabilize. But his system was already so tight and tense, it wasn't doing anything for him. He'd say, oh yeah, I feel better for like 30 minutes and then it comes back. And no one was really listening to that. It was just like, well, this is what we know to do. So this is all we do. Where when I just saw him move, having him bend over to touch his toes, he was literally shaking in his system because his body like did not trust him. Or lifting his arms above his head, he was like shaking. And I'm just like, oh, your body is shot, like it doesn't trust you at all. So we worked on breathing exercises, we worked on down regulation, we worked on getting his body to let go in these different positions. And I threw away all the stabilization Pilates type exercises. I mean, I taught Pilates for 6 years. I love it, but you have to know its time and place. And so for him, and if you're thinking of you, like I could barely touch my toes, my body is like super tight, I foam roll, I do all these things, you probably don't need more to throw at you. You actually need more to down regulate you. So how can we use your breath? How can we get you outside and looking at nature and doing practices that decrease the stress that you're experiencing within your body? And that's like when we started taking him there and working on big expansive breaths and getting him to use his diaphragm in different ways and then access different positions and be able to breathe in them, then we got him moving in so many different ways and strengthening along the way. And trust me, it took a year at least, and then some, to really get him back to like, okay, now go work with a personal trainer and get stronger and do all the things and go back to Pilates if you want to. But it took time to get there. And so it that's what's hard. There's never one way, right? There's never one thing to do. Sometimes if your body is feeling really tight, it does help to create tension and create that safety in order to move better. But sometimes we just need to downregulate the system altogether. And then other times you're already hypermobile. If your thumb is like the hitchhiker's thumb that can bend back really far, or you have hyperextended elbows, or you can touch the ground really easy, you probably don't need more flexibility and mobility. You probably need more strength. And so it's all along the spectrum of what's necessary for your body. And that's why it's so essential to get guided. I'd like to say, like, rather than just guessing on social media, because it's a really easy thing to do, you got to start self-assessing. And, that's why I created the mobility method, is to have a self-assessment screen to see what is actually needed in your body. But go to a physical therapist. Like it's so beneficial, even if you're not experiencing a lot of pain, but you have these little aches and things that pop up and you're unsure about it. Like go see someone, because they're going to help guide you into what's necessary and needed for your body. And so it's so hard to answer that, because the typical
No,
physical therapy answer is it depends.
no, it's actually, you answered it really well. And it makes me curious about your client. When you were doing intake with him, were you, when you saw the shaking, did you probe further? Did you like learn about his life and what he did and why he may be so protective? Is that part of your practice?
Totally. And personally, I feel like I can open up that gate a lot more with women. Like I've had tons of women who cry on my table. One woman is like, oh my God, 5 years of back pain gone. And it was the down regulation practice. Again, it's nothing I'm doing on people. It's just what I'm opening up the space to be held. So a lot of people end up crying. He never cried with me, but we did talk about mindset. We did talk about work. We did talk about stress, and just getting him to talk about these different experiences opened it up for him to explore for himself. And then he would talk to me with whatever he felt comfortable with. And it's so awesome to be able to open up that space in that conversation, because even with a client that I had where he had some nerve pain. And so we looked at what he was putting in his body. Was it super inflammatory? Was it, we looked at that stuff just on a very general base level. And then we looked at his stress and we looked at his movement and he was getting better. And then all of a sudden he went on vacation and he was like, the pain was gone. It was amazing. And then I came back to work on Monday, and just, little things I was doing, I felt it a little bit. And I was like, well, what do you think was the biggest difference? Was it really work, or was it the state of mind? Like you were free, you were on vacation, you didn't have to think about anything, versus you were at work, you were stressed. And he was like, oh, that's so interesting. And I've been able to get those little breakthroughs with people, and the most fun experience because it's just asking these questions and getting people to realize, oh yeah, it's not, if I'm sitting at work, but yet I'm sitting at my kid's game and I don't feel the pain, it's probably not just the sitting. It's probably the environment of which I'm putting myself in. So how can I switch my inner response and my stress in that environment to be something different? Because it's not like people could just be like, well, I'm not going to work anymore. But if
Yeah.
you can acknowledge, oh, I get stressed at work. So how can I create practices that help me to downregulate in my system so I don't have that experience of pain? I mean, your body remembers, and pain is not just physical.
I love that so much. And I kind of want to dive deeper into down regulation and how you help your clients to do that. What are some practices that we all can be doing daily to down regulate?
Yeah. I mean, I try to say like at least before bed, because that's the easiest time and the best time to really downregulate is at least when you're laying down, you're hopefully super comfortable, like get yourself in a comfortable position. And then I like to say place your hands along your low rib cage, because rather than doing the chest and the belly, like yes, we want the belly moving, but we really want this rib cage expanding front, side, and everywhere, 360 pattern, because that's going to allow the diaphragm to be able to move better. So I like to have people squeeze their rib cage. They can even use, like I've used towels, I've used sweaters, like whatever you can wrap around your little rib cage and kind of give it some love and give it a little squeeze. And then you take like a slow, intentional breath in through your nose and try to feel your hands separate on your rib cage. Try not to let your shoulders rise. Sometimes people do this in front of mirrors. So look at your neck muscles, look at your shoulders, look at what's happening. And can you get your more of your hands to expand rather than your shoulders to rise on that inhale? And then can you take a slower exhale? So maybe you do a 3 to 4 second inhale and then you do a 6 to 8 second exhale. And both can be in and out through your nose. Ultimately, we want to get you back into nasal breathing because that's going to help downregulate the system. But if you need to do an inhale and then an exhale where it's like pursed lips and you're like blowing out candles or blowing up a balloon, that really helps to kind of downregulate the system as well. I mean, this is like really good practice too. Like if you ever did cold training and went into a cold bath, have you done that, Kelly?
Yeah. And then you're immediately hyperventilating.
Yeah, yeah. But you use the breath to switch you, and you typically are doing inhales and then slow exhales through the mouth. And all of a sudden, you're in this state of chilling and freezing cold water. And you're like, how did I do that? And that's one of the greatest things I think people can experience just at least once. So, or turn your shower to super freezing and see if you can get your breath to actually balance out where you might be cold, but you're actually like, oh, I'm chilling, like I'm okay. And it's a really cool mindset trick of like, even when I'm in pain, I can get my body to experience something else. And it's just so, so powerful. And that's one of the greatest ways to downregulate the system is focus on that exhale, really extend that exhale longer than the inhale, get that rib cage to expand. And then if you can, we always want to look at, what am I looking at? Am I looking at a screen? Am I looking at my phone? That's going to cause more of that sympathetic kind of state. So you want more of that panoramic view, like think of looking at a sunset like that. You're never stressed looking at a sunset. So even if you were in a room, like how can you look forward, but take in the entire space? And when we start to put these little practices together, how can I go in sunlight? How can I be in nature? These are all down regulatory practices. And so using this, can help to really, I will have people do it and all of a sudden pain is gone or all of a sudden something happens. And that means, okay, then this isn't just physical. Like, yes, there is a part of physical that we want to work out and we want to get back into those areas you've been neglecting. However, we also get to look at inflammation and stress. And that comes into what you do with the food. And that comes into what is happening within your environment. And on a day-to-day basis, am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking enough water? Like it all goes into play. And I don't think it gets talked enough when there's pain in the body. I mean, even if we talk about osteoarthritis and bone on bone, like it's not the bone on bone that's causing the pain because bones don't have those nerve endings that are causing the pain. It's the inflammation within the joint. So how can we get you moving and lower the inflammation systemically, not just locally? It's not just a shot that's going to make you, maybe it could help for 1 or 2, but it's not going to really do the fix. The fix is systemically, how am I, carrying around inflammation within my body? And then can I still move? Like, that's going to make you feel the best. So it's taking in this practice as a whole. And I think down regulation practices need to be practiced on a daily basis.
This is functional physical therapy at its best, Jen. The root cause of the pain, like looking outside the pain, looking at like where it's coming from, whether that's, neighboring body parts or just the stress patterns in general that we're all dealing with. I love that we started there, because it's a different approach than just walking into a physical therapist's office and saying, this is where it hurts, and them throwing some electro stim on you or some heat or some ice, doing a couple movements and jumping back in your car. Like, it's a completely different experience. I love that we're starting with what is the core pain point here. What is the issue? It's functional physical therapy at its best, because it's looking at those neighboring body parts. It's looking at the bigger picture. It's looking at the stress patterns that we all have. And then if you've taken care of those things and you're like, no, the pain is still there, we got to figure it out, then we're working on mobility and stability, right? So,
I mean, we're working on it along the way, I will say. Like, there's always things that we're probably neglecting. Like, people look at me as the mobility queen. Trust me, I have places I'm neglecting as well that I could be working on more often. So it's like, the idea of my stomach growls means I'm neglecting food. I'm yawning, I'm neglecting sleep. So I'm having this pain area, I'm neglecting something in my body. And we all have that. Like, we're not perfect, and that's okay. We're all along this journey.
definitely. No, I love that. And I just love that you're bringing in the other piece. But I do want to give people who are listening some tips and tricks, because you are the mobility queen. And I like watch your videos and I'm like, shoot, I do that. How do I tuck here and twist that and roll this backwards? But let's talk about what most people deal with. They're sitting at their desk, they're keeled over their computer. How can we alleviate stiffness or misalignment that comes from like long days at a desk, and especially in like the Zoom era of 2020 and 2021?
I mean, truly, the best posture is the next posture. And I know it's not what everyone wants to hear, right? How do I set up my desk perfectly to be, and we could try the best what we can, but no one should ever be in a static posture for more than 30 minutes. And that's the hardest thing. Like, you and I even having this conversation, we're in a static position for over 30 minutes. And that just is what it is. It's okay. But like, can you go at least every hour and change your position? Even if it's just, I'm going to sit up and I'm going to open my chest, or I'm going to twist back in my chair. Like, even if it's that small, but you're making sure that you have this reminder or something that you're doing for every 30 minutes, every hour. Or what I like to do, maybe I sit in a chair and then I'll sit in a stool, and then I'll stand, then I'll sit on the couch, then I'll sit at my coffee table, and then I'll lay on my stomach. Like, how can we get our body into different positions? I think especially now that we have the accessibility to working at home a lot, use that. Like, don't be at a desk all day long. Kick off your shoes, have your feet free. Feet freedom is absolutely like one of the biggest things. And we stick our feet in shoes way too long. Even socks can kind of have that compressive feel around the toes. And what I like to say is, take off your socks at least every night for like 5 to 10 minutes. That's all you need to do. And interlace those socks between your toes. Hold that for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, watching TV, whatever. Take it off, and then just try to open the toes. Like, a lot of us don't have access. Like, what? Open my toe, move my toe. Like, we've lost that connection to our foot. So it's going to take time to build. That's okay. But that's one of the greatest things you can do, is taking off your shoes, interlacing your toes. Like, they should have space. I mean, I remember twice now I've been to get my nails done, and they haven't put the spacer between my toes. And I'm like, oh, that is gold right there. Where I've worked my feet so much that they don't put the space between them. They just do my nails. I'm like, see, guys, this is gold.
That's amazing. I didn't even know that was goals. Gecko feet.
Now I just discovered it's gold, because that's what they do now, which is amazing. So, and even hearing my mom's story, she's in her 60s. just at her place the other day, and she was saying, and I did not ask her, I'm not on top of her. Obviously, I'll help her with exercises if she needs to, but it's up to her if she's going to do them. And she said that, oh, remember when I used to have that really bad bunion? I've been doing those sock and toe exercises and the ankle stretches, and it's significantly reduced, and I have no more pain. And she's in her 60s. I
That's
was like,
amazing.
do we have photos of this foot?
Yeah. When we see the feet on a 60-year-old woman's feet on Instagram, we'll know that those are your poor mom's feet.
Too bad I don't have a before and after. But I mean, like that's real though. Like change is possible. It takes time and it's consistency. So when we're looking for the one thing to come to fix our posture, to do something, it's what are the little things that you're doing every single day that's making a difference? So are you really committing to every hour you're getting up, you're stretching, you're doing something? Are you sitting on the floor and standing? Like we talk about sit to stand desk, but we don't talk about sitting on the floor crisscross applesauce anymore. And we're not doing that enough unless you're in yoga or Pilates. Like we're not sitting on the floor enough. So or can you fold laundry on the floor? That's a mobility exercise right there without even thinking about it, is just spending more time on the floor. And so it's like being honest with yourself, like, okay, besides just going and getting a massage that can temporarily feel better, am I actually implementing these little things throughout the day that don't have to be complicated, that don't have to take super long? And that's the stuff that really helps.
I love it. Well, you dropped the sock between the toes tip. And then you just said that your mom did ankle exercises. Is that something that we should all be doing at home too? And what are these ankle exercises?
I mean, it's literally just like, so if you were to assess it, if you come near a wall and you scoot your toe like 4 to 5 inches away from the wall, if you can bend your knee forward and touch your knee to the wall, like your knee should be able to pass your big toe 4 to 5 inches. That's functional range of motion. If you're like, oh, wow, that's not coming close, then you know you have some work to do. And literally the stretch is to stay in that position. So I like to put my foot up on a chair and I'll kind of lean forward into my knee and push my knee past my toe. And it's doing that, or holding a low squat for like 1 to 2 minutes every day. My fiance likes to climb trees, and so he'll climb a tree and go do a stretch up in a tree for his ankle and do that for a while. But it's just these little tiny things, and like everyone on Instagram wants to see the sexy moves, the sexy things, but it's never about that. It's really like the simplest things that can make the biggest difference.
I love it. I love it. Let's work our way up the body then. If people have, like, I want to say pain points, some of the biggest ones, bunion, feet and ankle pain, we've handled that. What if someone has like knee pain or hip pain? Mm-hmm. Or would it be around that? Would it be like low back pain, for example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So usually when it's knees, like we want to be looking at how the ankle is moving, because if I'm going into a squat and my ankle doesn't have that mobility to go forward, the knee might take on more pressure. Same with the hip. If the hip isn't very open, the knee might take on more pressure. And so I like to, rather than focusing on just hip flexors and hamstrings, I also like to think about the rotation within our hips, our internal external rotation. And I'm sure you've seen on Instagram, you can always scroll my page and find the hip 90-90 stretch. I promise it's on there. It's on there a few times, probably when you scroll a bit. But the hip 90-90 stretch is one of the easiest ones to come into because it's external rotation for the back leg. It's internal rotation for the front, or sorry, other way. It's external rotation for the front leg, internal rotation for the back leg. So even just sitting in that, we're already getting the stretch. So you can lean forward, kind of work the front leg. You can lean back, work the back leg, and literally just sitting in there already helps to improve your range of motion. If it's uncomfortable to sit, you can stack pillows underneath your bottom and just kind of raise the surface. But a super easy one to do. And again, I promise I have it on my page. There's some
90-90 hip stretch. We got it.
You can, I promise you can find it. And
we'll put it in the show notes.
and that one is just, it feels great. It's helped people relieve knee pain, back pain, hip pain, like, I mean, you name it, you just start doing it. And again, do it when you're folding laundry, doing it when you're watching TV. Like, how can I sprinkle this in throughout my day of things I'm already doing that make it easy and attainable? And so that's when I love to do when it comes to hip flexor tightness, because that's a huge one. It's really how much are you coming back to this breath? Because if we think about our rib cage and our pelvis, a lot of times our pelvis might stick forward and our rib cage might come back because we think we need to be in good posture. I'm going to pull my shoulder blades down and back. But what that ends up doing is flipping our rib cage up, right? And then now I don't have this stack of this rib cage over pelvis. And we need this stack because it's literally how our breath comes in, it pushes down to the pelvic floor, and then it comes out. But if my pelvis is forward, my rib cage is out, well, then where's my breath going to? It might go forward to my belly. It might go back into my pelvic floor more. It might go up into my chest. And I'm going to start to kind of develop these imbalances or pain points just along my body just because I have an overuse of muscles that don't really need to be turning on. And so a lot of times when we're feeling this hip flexor tightness because my pelvis is dumping forward into that anterior tilt, it's really just, can you expand again from that rib cage to the side? And as soon as you drop that rib cage, what ends up happening is we kind of stack over that pelvis like intuitively. Your body just, well, if it doesn't need to be forward, it's going to come under. So it just kind of intuitively does it. So if we start working that rib cage expansion, and sometimes I even wrap a band around my rib cage and I'll do mobility movements or I'll do my warm ups, or you could do breathing, like whatever it is, you could work a little bit with a band around your rib cage. And as long as you're reminding your body, expand from here, breathe from here, you start to kind of naturally stack that rib cage and pelvis. And all of a sudden, your hip flexor pain is no longer there. Your hip flexor tightness, you don't need to dig into it. You don't need to break it up, because we're not breaking it up if we dig into anything.
Mhm.
And we don't need to keep stretching it. Like, it will automatically start to go away when you stack that rib cage and pelvis, and then you start to bring that into movement. And it takes time, awareness, practice. I mean, it's something I talk through in all of my programs, is that constant cueing of what is our body doing when we're moving, and where am I focusing on, and where's my breath going? And when we get that foundation, then we're able to build up on strength so much more.
I love it. You just mentioned pelvic floor. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into the pelvic floor and the core connection. It obviously starts with the foundation of our shoulders over our hips,
Mhm.
but how can someone who wants to increase core strength and make sure that they don't have any issues with pelvic floor, whether that's like post-pregnancy, or later in life, how do we make sure that we're, that our core and our pelvic floor are like strong, but like moving functionally?
Yeah. My first recommendation to everyone, especially women, is to go see a pelvic floor therapist. Even if you don't have kids, you don't feel any issues, just go see a pelvic floor therapist, because we usually have zero awareness as to what's happening down there. Like, we go get massages, we get touched on our back, we get touched around our shoulders and our neck. We get this feedback and this stimulation, but we don't really to our pelvic floor, and we have no idea what it's supposed to feel like or supposed to be. And we're so disconnected with that area. And your gynecologist is amazing for understanding disease, not as great with understanding exercise or what you really need. So that's where a pelvic floor therapist can really help guide. And I promise there's probably one near you. You just got to start asking. And referrals, word of mouth is great. There's also pelvicguru.com. You can go there, and I think you can find, like, type in your zip code or something, and they'll populate pelvic floor therapists around you. And so
Great.
there, it's accessible. And even if you don't have a lot of money, tell your therapist up front, I'm coming once. This is all I have, the money for. So what can you provide me that I can do on my own? And there's so much that you could do on your own. It's just about getting assessed. And so I always start there, because leaking, peeing, not being able to jump rope, all these things are common, but they don't have to be normal. And we get, if we have a rotator cuff tear, this is one of my my PT friends, and she's a pelvic floor therapist, Marcy, and she's great at this analogy, but she talks about like the shoulder, and we tear our rotator cuff and then we go to 8 months of physical therapy. Well, you go have a baby, you might tear, and then you get no help at all. You're like, return to activity after 6 weeks. And you're like, what? Like no
Yeah.
help, no guide, no nothing. So it's just bonkers. And hopefully that continues to shift and gynecologists continue to refer to pelvic floor therapy. I'm confident that that's where we're going to move into, because you just don't know if you're too tight. We don't know if you're need to gain strength. There's also different types of strength. So it's not just about the Kegel, because I can sit here and squeeze my booty even, or squeeze my bicep. But if I can't do that during movement, then it means absolutely nothing, right? Like if
Yeah.
I can't control this contraction while I sneeze, while I work out, while I'm running, then it means absolutely nothing to be able to do it statically. So it's not just about being able to do Kegels just sitting or at a stoplight, but it's really about, how am I using my pelvic floor when I'm breathing? How am I using my pelvic floor when I'm exercising? And just like we can't contract on an already contracted bicep, we need that full length of relaxation to be able to contract. So sometimes it's being able to relax that area and it's too tight. And so again, seeing a pelvic floor therapist is just so helpful to get that feedback and awareness.
I love it. I do think we're moving that direction. It's all about female empowerment. No, but it is like, I think our generation is just like, no, I'm not going to sit here with this pain.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not going to be okay with like 2 weeks maternity leave. No, I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
like, and we're kind of pushing back against the norm. I'm not going to be okay peeing my pants at my kid's soccer game. Like,
Yeah.
that's just like not cool for me. It's
Yeah,
not gonna fly.
exactly. It
If I chase,
shouldn't be.
if I chase a ball off the sideline, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's not gonna fly. So, so I am curious, because I know there's probably some things that we're all doing that we think are good, but they aren't great. You sort of mentioned breaking something up. I'd love for you to touch on some like uh, beliefs in and around our body that maybe are a disservice to us, or where you laugh when you hear people say something and you're
Yeah.
like, that no, that's not something that's actually happening in your body. What are some funny beliefs that you're going to debunk here for us today?
Well, I don't want to make anyone feel bad. So first of all, it's not your fault if you didn't know this. I always like to start there. But I will say, foam rolling, all of this stuff, or the Theraguns or anything that's being done onto us, like it's great stimulation and it's great feedback, but it's nothing that's going to miraculously heal anything or put anything back or break up adhesions. It's just not possible. Like the only way to break up fascia or to release scar tissue is to go under the knife and cut it. That's truly the only way. So it's not possible when we're putting pressure or someone has their hands on us. But what is happening is that we're talking to our system, we're talking to our brain, and there's these mechanoreceptors underneath our skin that are processing different things, and they respond to heat, they respond to touch, they respond to pressure, and they respond to vibration. So if we start thinking of these different things, even cupping with the heat, or pressure, manual massage, if we think of vibration from the gun, like all of these things talk to our system. So they're just talking to our mechanoreceptors and telling it like, hey, chill out, you're fine, you don't need to be tense. And that's really the goal, is just to decrease that temporary local tension within the area. If it is resulting in an increase of pain for you, you're probably doing too much, because again, we're not breaking anything up. So it shouldn't be like, let me grit and bear through this pain. At some level, we know there is sometimes this moderate level of pain, and some people like to bump up more to it. And there's a new theory out there of like, we're releasing more of the natural drugs from our own system that kind of open that drug cabinet and allow natural opioids within our body to kind of release and cause some pain relief. And so there's a degree of pain that some people like to bump up into when they're foam rolling or when they're getting a massage. But it's really, it's just our system relaying this, release the pain and release the tension. It's not like, so I don't want you to go into something thinking that someone's trying to break something up. They might still be telling you that, and that's okay. But now you get to know that that's not happening. And we're still observing what's happening, like there's still knowledge and research and things that we're learning. Adjustments, cavitations, cracks, they're just an air release essentially of pressure. And so it's not necessarily aligning us, but it's allowing our system to feel better in that moment, allow it to feel more range of motion, allow it to feel like it's quote unquote aligned, but it's not necessarily. It's allowing us to access into our range of motion, into our body that we weren't able to before. So they're great tools. Like I still do manual therapy. I will still adjust or manipulate someone, because if it helps along their journey of getting back into movement, then goal. Like
Yeah.
that's the whole purpose, So I'm definitely not a therapist who's against any modality. It's just, what is the education that we're putting behind this modality, and how are we saying that it's helping? Because it's not the fix, it's just an access into the body for that temporary moment in time. It's truly only a moment in time, and then we get to gain that access and get into movement and feeling something different. And so those are like some of the biggest ones. The other one I will say is just the idea of aligning and coming into perfect symmetry. Is your body is all messed up on the inside. Like we've got a huge liver, we've got intestines, we've got like everything is a little bit all over the place inside. So to expect that the outside is going to be perfectly symmetrical is kind of laughable.
Yeah.
And though we want to be searching for a better balance for sure, and I think that's a goal to continue to work toward, it's not that we're needing perfect symmetry. And so letting go of this idea of like, is my posture good? Because sometimes we hold on to too much tension if we're trying to create this perfect posture. And so it's really about, okay, let me relax actually. Let me sit back in my chair and actually allow my body to be supported. Like we're trying so hard to create these perfect postures, we end up increasing the tension within our body and ultimately increasing pain. So know that your body can relax, like it's got you, and we don't have to be super tense. It's just about all the movement we get to do throughout the day that help and truly support us in our body.
I love that so much. I really do feel like my quote unquote alignment was just best when I was strong and teaching yoga, because the alignment of what you're talking about, just like my shoulders sitting on top of my hips, I wasn't like using a lot of muscle to hold anything back or up. It was what it was, because the strength that I think I had created along the practice of teaching and practicing and just loving it so much, I kind of went down the rabbit hole of being obsessed with it for a little while, because it made my body feel great. I think it just felt strong, and I had that like stability and mobility in that practice. I love that too, that you're just kind of not debunking, but just explaining to people a little bit about that biofeedback that they're getting, whether it's vibration. I'm definitely someone who, if you're going to butter my toast in a massage, like I'll take my robe and go elsewhere. Like I want the pain on the table. Like give me the elbow and the knee and whatever. You stand on my back. I don't care.
And that's fine. Like if that's what your system thrives off of, then great.
But I think in just having this conversation with you, I think it's just it supports me to downregulate, because I don't feel, my job may be stressful in regards to like the number of things I have to do in a day, but I never really feel like I'm mentally stressed. Like I always am like, I got this. But every time anyone touches my body, they're like, you don't got this. There's like tension and stress and knots in your body, whether your mind thinks it doesn't realize it or not, So I think probably in just having this conversation with you, kind of an aha moment for me is like, I love the foam roller. I love the Theragun. Like I love the hard massage. It's just I think it's just down regulating me.
Totally. I mean, and it forces you to, because if you're going to get a hard massage, you have to breathe through the pain, right? You have to down regulate, or else you're going to be tensing against it. So it forces you to get into that practice, and tissues hold the issues.
I love it. Quote of the day. Issues hold the issues. We're gonna make that your highlight reel. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. Well, this has been just eye-opening for me. I feel like I if people have pain or pain in their body, can you tell us like a little bit about your mobility method and like how it works?
Yeah. So I started with the mobility method because I knew that everyone on my page really liked mobility for me. And so I was like, okay, well, let me give you an assessment tool then that you can use to better access what you need in your body. And that's the thing about the mobility method. There's a 23 movement self-assessment, and then based on that self-assessment, here's what you should do. But it's up to you to pick those exercises and when you're going to in your life. And it's really, it holds you accountable to do the work. Like I don't believe in hand holding because there's never one way to do anything. I can't, it's hard for me to create this program on back pain because I'm like, but what if this person needs something else, you know? And it's always the push and pull of what marketings want from me and where I think I believe. So the mobility method is I say, okay, it's one price, you get lifetime access, just go through it and take your time. Like explore your body, get to know your body. That's the best thing that you can do is just continue learning and coming back and having grace along the journey. You're not going to always do it, but you can come and go from it. And then the optimal body I created as a way of like, okay, let's take these generalized mobility flows so that you at least are doing something and implementing it. Let's take this core and have it from core 1, where we're talking about the pelvic floor and the breath, and then bump it up to core 4 throughout the month so that you can understand how that progression feels in a safe and healthy manner and what the core can really feel like rather than just the six pack. And then we go into functional workouts, we go into muscle activations or like corrective exercises. And this way I'm giving people the gamut of everything you would get from a physical therapist essentially. And the more that, like, I've had someone who, one of my, I mean, there's so many, but one of the biggest comments that I loved was someone who said, you know, debilitating SI pain, had to wear belts, and it felt so uncomfortable. And then 5 months into the program, no more belt, doing HIIT workouts, doing movements that she never had before. And it took 5 months. But that's what I like want to tell people is it takes time. You have to give your body the ability to take that time to continue to learn. If we really are looking for long-term relief and feeling something different, it's a balance, it ebbs and flows. Just like you feel like you're not in it with your body right now, it's going to come and go. There's going to be times when it feels great, there's going to be times when it doesn't, but it's all continued learning along the way. And my goal is to give people that opportunity, like trust the process. It can get better, and it is going to get better. Just give yourself the time and the resources to allow that to happen.
I love it. Probably all of these, the instability that people have and all the pain surrounding something by the time they get to a physical therapist, it's at an all-time high.
Yeah.
And it's probably been building up for years
Yeah.
leading up to it. So give yourself at least 5 months to get it all sorted out.
Oh, yeah.
I
It
love
takes
it.
time. Mm-hmm.
If you were to tell people if they wanted to go see a physical therapist, is there anything we should be looking for, like associations that people should be involved in, any type of specific practices that they should, follow? I don't know the physical therapy space as well, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But are there some just foundational things that your physical therapist should know, or a way to assess if you're with the right person?
I would say word of mouth is super powerful. So if you know someone who got helped from someone, then they're probably a good resource because clearly you saw that they did the work for someone. And then you want to know that they're at least taking that 30 minutes to an hour to really get to know you, to look at not only like what you're saying and what's hurting, but like look at the big picture of, are they asking your overall goals? Are they assessing you from head to toe, even like looking at your entire body, not just the shoulder, and really addressing you, hearing you. You don't want someone who's going to cut you off and just getting to the point. Like I remember being in a class and they told us to cut people off because they'll go into their pain story and they'll talk forever. So you just have to reel them back to the pain. And it's like, no, but it's all part of the picture. And it's hard in a lot of physical therapy offices when they run like mills to get people through. So that's why referral sources are so huge. You can call also and see how long a physical therapist actually has to spend with you, I think is a huge one. There are more practices that are doing hour-long consultations now instead of just 15 minutes. 15 minutes doesn't give you a lot of time at all to see anyone. And if it is a referral to someone who's out of network, can you save up the money to go 1 to 2 times and be very clear with that therapist? Like, I can't see you very much. And so give me all that you can, like now, the
Yeah.
first time.
Give me the biggest
And
bang for my buck.
exactly. And that's what I try to do with my clients. Like I say, I don't have time for you. So I'm going to give you as much as I can right now so that you don't have to come back to me. And that's really what you want from a therapist is you want the tools, you want the understanding. Ask questions too. Why would this exercise help me? What is it doing in my body? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to understand things. And if you're just getting hooked up on electrical stimulation or ultrasound and you're spending majority of the time in your office on these passive modalities, it's probably best to go see someone else.
Great advice. Great advice. Jen, I feel like, yes, I want to be on your table because I feel hypermobile and with zero stability coming out of my pregnancy, but I'm working my way back up. I'm going to get my hands on the mobility method and bring all that strength back in my body because that's when I feel my best. It's when I breathe the best too.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you. It's kind of interesting one for you. What does body love mean to you?
Body love is really embracing the ebbs and flows of what the body goes through and having grace over guilt. Like that's been my saying this year is rather than feeling guilty for not doing enough, for not getting the stuff, for not feeling good. It's like grace for the moment that I am in life and the place that I'm at and grace for the pain that my body may be experiencing and the place it's at. Like it's all good. It's all just working along the journey. And so grace over guilt is body love.
I love it so much. And the journey may be longer than you expect, but it's a lot better to think about the future without pain.
Yes.
Jen, this is awesome. Where can people follow along with you? Where can they find the mobility method and see that 90-90 stretch? They're all going to be sticking their socks between their toes.
Yes. I love when I get like weird feet pictures of socks between the toes.
You just have toes in your DM.
I do.
People are just sliding their toes into your DMs.
It happens. And I'm not mad at it at all. But you can find me at Doc10 Fit. You can send me your toe photos. That's fine. Maybe no weird ones, but show me you're doing the stuff that I'm saying. Doc10 Fit across the board. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Pinterest, everywhere. Doc10 Fit.
Awesome. Head to the show notes. We'll throw her 90-90 stretch in here, links to the mobility method and all her social media online. Jen, you're the best. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.